Welcome to coaches, administrators, and anybody else who has joined us today. I mean, not everybody else, not welcome to everybody. Welcome to all of you good guys. And I'm glad that you've stepped on here to learn about the nation's fastest growing sport, women's wrestling. And thanks for taking this time out of your day to start to learn how to start a women's wrestling program. Or to learn about how to start a women's wrestling program. My name is Taylor O'Donnell Bacher. I was a member of the first ever U.S. women's wrestling team in the Olympics in 2004 in Athens, Greece. I currently homestead in Homer, Alaska. And I work with Wrestle Like a Girl, the national nonprofit whose mission is to empower girls and women using the sport of wrestling to become leaders in life. Tonight you will learn the why and the how to get a girls wrestling program started in your school. We know that this is a challenging time to be an AD or a coach or be involved with athletics because there's so much uncertainty around high school sports and returning to play. Our intentions are not to add pressure to you, to add a girls program tomorrow or immediately. Our goal is to give you the support and the education and a foundation to start building a program. So when the mat opens back up fully, it will be open not only to boys, but to girls as well. In many cases, you are the gatekeepers of opportunity for girls. And we thank you for your curiosity and your willingness to listen. A couple of housekeeping items. I think you guys are good at this already, but maybe mute your mics if you haven't already. And if you have questions as we go, type them in the text box below, and we'll answer these questions at the end of the presentation. If you have a pressing question, you can raise your hand, and if the speaker has the opportunity, they'll call on you. Otherwise, we'll answer that question at the end. It is truly an honor to work with the Ohio community, and it's my pleasure to welcome Vanessa Oswald to talk more about Ohio state sanctioning. Thanks, guys.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Oswald. I wrestled for Ohio back in the day, and then I competed on the senior level as well. And currently, I am an Olentangy Orange assistant girls wrestling coach. And I'm currently the chair of Sanction Ohio, which we are a grassroots effort by wrestling leaders of the state of Ohio, working towards getting girls wrestling as a sanctioned sport here in Ohio. We have coaches, we have athletic directors, we have principals, referees, parents, all on this task force. The Sanction Ohio goals are to educate coaches and administrators on girls wrestling, work with individual schools to form official girls teams, provide resources to schools and coaches to develop girls teams, work with Ohio High School Athletic Association Wrestling Committee and Ohio High School Wrestling Coaches Association on sanctioning efforts, help coordinate competition opportunities until sanctioning is achieved, provide opportunities for girls to be able to reap the amazing benefits of this sport of wrestling, and to get girls wrestling as an official OHSAA sport and to have it as a state championship as well. Next slide.
I'm Jeff Martin. I'm the communications and social media chair or co-chair for Sanction Ohio. Also been involved with the Ohio Girls National Team for a number of years and president of the Helixton Central Ohio Youth Wrestling League. What I'm going to talk about are some data trends and some numbers behind the movement. One thing that we've heard over the years is you got to have the numbers, and what we're trying to show is the numbers are coming up. Looking across the U.S., you can see since 1999, numbers have increased every single year it's almost tenfold over those 20 years, and the growth keeps getting larger every single year. Same thing in Ohio. We were stagnant for a few years. We had a little bit of a jump in the mid 2000 teens. And then this year we added the Ohio High School Wrestling Coaches Association state tournament. And we saw our numbers double. And that's not a fully sanctioned event or championship, but it pulled in a lot of girls and showed them that they had an opportunity to wrestle against their own gender. And we saw those numbers increase. A positive trend and something we just started looking at was, where are the girls divided up by grade? And a few years ago, it was pretty even across freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Last year, we saw a little bit of a jump in the freshmen as some of our youth and our middle school, our grassroots movement are starting to filter into the high school level. And now you can really see that they transitioned over to sophomores, and now the freshmen jumped again by offering the Coaches Association tournament last year. So we're getting a lot of girls starting as freshmen and a lot of middle schoolers coming up. But as those numbers triculate over through junior and senior years, I mean, obviously the numbers are going to keep growing and growing. Right now, this is the map of sanctioned states in the U.S. The dark blue ones have all sanctioned. Nevada actually did, since this map was last updated, become the 28th state. So I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 2015, 2016, that there were only 6 states, and now we're at 28. And last, the impact of sanctioning. So Missouri sanctioned in 2018. And you can see they were in the low 100s, middle 100s. As soon as they sanctioned and became a true state sport, they jumped up to 900, and then over, quite a bit higher the second year, over 800% growth in just 2 years. So having that ability and allowing the schools to call it a sanctioned sport really provides a lot of positives, and we can get the girls on the mat when that happens.
Hi, I'm Genevieve Duxbury, and I'm going to talk to you about the reasons for forming a girls' team. I also wrestled back in the day, like Vanessa said, and I was lucky enough to be a high school assistant wrestling coach at Lutheran West High School this year. So let's start at the top, which is the individual benefits. Females experience all the same ones that their male counterparts do: physical challenge, mental toughness, perseverance, body awareness, mental attitude, did I say that already? And physical confidence. And females should just have the same opportunities to grow in those areas. The more important things are about growing our sport. The best way to grow the sport of girls wrestling is to include a division where girls can compete against their own gender. Just because a girl can be successful against the boys does not mean that the sport will grow to its potential by limiting competition. There are many obstacles that girls must face in order to be accepted into an all-boys team, and these kinds of roadblocks prevent many girls from joining the sport and competing against other females just like any other high school sport. Once coaches and athletic departments commit to expanding wrestling opportunities to female athletes, the girls have shown up. In many of the states that have recently sanctioned, the number of girls involved doubles or triples within just 1 to 2 years after sanctioning, and Ohio is already seeing that trend, just like Jeff pointed out. Additionally, having more girls' teams and girls-only events means that we're not only creating an even playing field for females, but we are also preventing the awkward but real stress that boys face by having to wrestle girls in competition. The next thing I want to talk about is the impact on culture. In a white paper from Wrestle Like a Girl called Why Women's Wrestling, Why Now?, they said that adding female teams to schools with already existing male teams could result in improvements in wrestling culture. Moreover, it would set the tone for an inclusive and equitable athletic department and learning institution. Research also indicates that female wrestlers in high school and college feel well supported and accepted by their male wrestling peers. As women train and compete alongside men, male wrestlers develop respect for their female teammates through observation of their female peers working hard and being committed to the sport. Adding a women's team and combining it with the men's teams makes wrestling a gender-inclusive sport and provides opportunities to reduce the tendency for male team members to see Title IX as a threat to their sport, and the tendency for female team members to see males as threats to their safety. The last point I wanted to bring up is the myriad of opportunities that girls have post-high school. Right now we're seeing lots of colleges increasing their female teams, and it seems to be a sustained amount of growth. As a result, females have a lot more scholarships and other opportunities to pursue the sport at a higher level. And that's it for me.
How you doing? My name's Sean Andrews. I'm the head wrestling coach at Marysville High School. I'm also on the executive committee for the State High School Wrestling Coaches Association as a vice president. So I'm really going to talk about how to structure and coordinate practices. And just a little backstory, we had 5 girls on the team 2 years ago and 12 girls this past year. And so, part of what I have included here is me learning from my own mistakes. But I think the most important thing to remember is flexibility is key. Most schools have 1, maybe 2 wrestling spaces if you're lucky enough to have one at the middle school and the high school. And most schools are also running their youth programs out of their high school or middle school room. So you really have to kind of take a 30,000-foot view and really try to schedule things out. It's important that you have a system and not that we just wing it. We've always been, most wrestling coaches, at least during the season, have kind of been the gatekeepers of their facility. And so by adding another team underneath the umbrella of your program, you just got to have a structure and a plan. And to that end, it's really important that you get communication and buy-in from all the coaches from middle school, high school, and youth all the way up. Because the worst thing can happen is that your youth coaches are complaining to somebody else because their practice time got shortened, or their middle school coaches don't buy in or believe that you should have a girls team because it's impacting their practice schedule or their team. And so it's really important that as you move forward, you get everybody rowing the boat in the same direction. Again, these are things that worked for us at Marysville or things that we learned from. Consider splitting practice, not necessarily, yes, boys members and girls members, but maybe sometimes you have some girls who are fairly experienced. And so splitting it by skill level, a lot of times early in the year, we would, even before we had girls on the team, we would split our freshmen and have them come for a block of time because we wanted to acclimate them to our system. So doing the same thing, right? Combining some of those early first-year wrestlers or freshmen with first-year girls wrestlers. And then giving yourself the flexibility to change that throughout the season. We try to use natural opportunities where they exist. So, for example, in Columbus, within our dual schedule, boys typically wrestle on Thursdays. And so that gave us the opportunity to have girls-only practices on Thursdays where they could, kind of review what happened within competitions within the last couple of weeks or ask questions or really kind of slow the pace down. And again, I can tell you as someone who's trying to run a high school boys program and add a girls program, sometimes you just get on the treadmill and you don't think to stop and ask questions about what doesn't make sense. So building those days in was really, really beneficial this past year. Next slide. Even if you're not going to have separate practices, because again, I think I could be wrong, but my anticipation is that for a lot of you, you're going to start with that number of 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 girls. So you're probably not going to run completely separate practices, but it is important when possible to kind of have a carved out section of the room. That way, if you are changing partners frequently, they're not running across the room to grab another partner that's similar in skill level. It also, I think, helped our girls feel like there was a safe space where there was a coach nearby who they could ask questions to. And it just made them feel connected to someone else. I think, again, a couple of the coaches are going to talk about recruitment and the importance of bringing a friend, but it's definitely, the retention rate's higher when they have someone else going through this new experience with them. And again, for us, most of our girls were brand new to wrestling. Our most experienced girls wrestled 2 years, last year and this year. So there was a lot of things that maybe as a coach who's coached for a long time, I took for granted that it's been really a good learning opportunity for me to try to support them. Don't be hesitant to over communicate the purpose and expectation for all athletes. Again, I think this is really important. And again, I'm just speaking frankly. I think there were boys on the team who this has always been their space. It's been their sport. And we've been decently successful at Marysville. And so they felt like they were kind of being, I don't want to say invaded, but the things were changing. And so it was really important that you explain the purpose, the expectation, and lay those ground rules out early. So that everybody's on the same page. As a coach, you guys all know, that's really, really important to have clear expectations. Finally, and again, I mentioned earlier, let your needs dictate what you do. Whether you have a combined practice, separate boys and girls practice, all that's going to be unique to you and your situations. There is not a one-size-fits-all model. One thing that came up yesterday we talked about that I think is important is finding what your district expects of you in terms of locker room access and supervision. Do you have a female athletic trainer, or do you have a coach of another sport, or maybe it's just another adult who can help you out by supervising after school until 3:30 for the girls to go in and get changed, or similarly at the end of practice. trying to come up with an additional scale or a system in which the boys and girls share the scale, but sometimes, certain days or certain weeks, the guys get the scale first and then they got to bring it out and give it to the girls. Because I think one mistake you can make is to always give precedent to one group or the other. And again, having someone, whether that's a captain, a senior, or that adult, manage or monitor their weights so that you have an idea and that you are making sure that you're keeping the health of your athletes in mind. Again, all of us have been coaching long enough to know that wrestlers are not always honest when they tell you what they weigh. You got to add a couple pounds. But I think those are supervision pieces and schedule and logistics that just adding another team that's in another space and then also sharing space really become important. So if there's anything I can address at the end, please don't hesitate to ask questions. Again, I'm happy to help, and thanks for your time.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Nicola. I'm I work with Jeff Martin. We do some of the communication stuff, and I do he does a lot of social media and pushes a lot of stuff out there. I do some of the video stuff that we kind of, and some of the graphics we push out there. I'm here, and I'm going to talk about the financial and team pathways. I'm joined by my athletic director at Orange High School, Brett Deal. Say hi, Brett.
Sorry, I had myself muted.
That's all right. So I'm glad to have him here with me tonight. We're going to talk about kind of what, this is something I think is probably a big concern when if you're a coach here, or if you're an AD, or you're an administrator, when you start talking about adding things, especially, now we're in the middle of trying to figure out what sports look like this year. I think immediately red flags go up, and that's not the purpose of this. As Taylor said at the top of the webinar, there's a lot of ways, and as I talk to people, I think there's a lot of misconceptions that we kind of want to talk about as we talk about pathways to building a program and ways to do it in a very, fiscally sound way, and in a way, truthfully, that can enhance your program. So one of the things we know, if we add things, we know that's going to push us closer to sanctioning. And as we get sanctioned, that's going to encourage districts to add a program. So it's this chicken and an egg thing, and we realize there's no easy way to examine it. But as we add females to our sport here in Ohio at the high school level, middle school level, youth level, that is going to enhance the need within districts to add a program. So a girls team, as we look at it now, I think we had 99 schools enter a girl at the state tournament. And that's a lot. Okay, it's a lot of teams showing up with at least one kid. We've seen that it can exist in an urban environment, in a suburban environment, in rural. All the people's names I look up on here, there's people from all of those different types of schools. So it's very similar to a guys program or traditional program here in OSA. Some things to keep in mind before I pass it over to Brett to talk about the different approaches to it was, when I approached Brett in the fall, and we had been working out during the summer, and we had some admin changeover, I realized very quickly, I'm an assistant coach, and I work with the girls with Vanessa at Orange, and our head coach, Scott Tressler, had really encouraged us to do this and was really supportive through it. When we went to Brett, we were not we didn't do a very good job of explaining how the program was nested. And we found that between us, Brett, and then our district administration, we just weren't using the same language to describe what we were trying to accomplish. And once we did that, we were able to figure out how to make it work, okay? And so I think that's something that you've got to be able to do within your program, and Brett will talk about that in a minute. So one thing to keep in mind is state wrestling admin Tyler Brooks, he's been a pretty good ally throughout this entire thing, they're figuring out a whole bunch of different stuff at OSA now. They got their hands full, but one thing he's done really nice through this process is he sent clarifying emails out to ADs stating, any girl rostered in your program is an OSA athlete. She's not a club athlete. She's not, if she alpha tests and she is rostered in your program, she is an OSA athlete. She'll receive all the benefits of it. So it's always been co-ed. There's been, a while ago, there was just less girls wrestling. So now there's more new regulations coming out in this 2020-2021 wrestling handbook in Ohio. We'll expand on girls' schedules, how we handle points, weigh-ins. All of those things are addressed in the new OSA handbook that's coming out to you guys. So some of the concerns within your athletic department or your administration can really be answered just kind of referring to that and saying, hey, look, they've always been OSA athletes. We're just looking at a couple different ways. So I'll pass it over to Brett now and let him talk a little bit about some of the.
All right, so as you can see from the sheet, there's talking to Coach Nicole, we kind of thought of 3 different ways that you can look to start a program. First way would be like a completely separate program, basically a standalone team. The middle way, which we did, is kind of a separate girls team underneath our varsity wrestling, our wrestling program. So this past year we had a varsity team, a JV team, and then like kind of a girls only team. They still practice very similar times. They did most of the stuff together. We just had a separate girl schedule, just like you'd have a separate JV schedule. The kind of third way is just doing a recognized club program. I don't think there's one right way. It has to work for every single school. I think the biggest thing here is what's going to work best for your school and your program. I think there's benefits to doing it for each of the 3 ways. There's also downfalls to each of the 3 ways. And we kind of listed some of those here that we just kind of thought off the top of our heads, stuff that we noticed as we progress throughout the year. But, again, there's not one perfect way to do it. It's a matter of what's going to work best for your school. And if you want to start a program, you might have to be creative at times, and there's going to be hiccups and pitfalls and stumbles, but just kind of keep working through those. And, I've already noticed this summer, everything's going a lot smoother. We know we're all on the same page. We know the direction we're going. We know where we want to get to. But it's just kind of hiccups there at the beginning, but now we're on the right path to where we want to be. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I can hopefully share some of the struggles we had and maybe how I would do stuff different from what I did this past year.
Thanks, Mr. Deal. I'm just going to share some of the things that worked for us at Orange and how we treated it, and just kind of build on some of the stuff Brett was talking about. We treat it just like any other schedule, and so by kind of nesting it under there, we knew we didn't have budget up front to cover everything because it was kind of a late ad, truthfully. When we started to look at the program in April of 2019, I hadn't coached in a few years. I thought we'd get 4 or 5 girls out. We had one really tough kid coming back, and we had one girl. And I thought we'd had 4 or 5, and it would just be a couple tournaments, but we ended up with 22. So that changed how we approached funding, which was very, very tricky. We were able to kind of, by nesting it under it, we covered the busing. Our head coach was able to kind of split some contracts up. And we were able to fundraise most of our tournament fees, and administration was able to jump in when they could on some different fees, and patches at the end of the season, and just some really cool stuff. And we were very collaborative. We know moving forward what our budget is, and as we grow as a program, and as the district kind of continues to kind of like bring it into the fold, we know that budget stuff will change. One thing that I know yesterday when we were going over this was, and this is really guys or girls, and I think Sean said this, don't be afraid to advocate for your program. One thing I'm really trying to do this year with our girls side is to create a couple of events that are must-sees, and we know that as a new sport, it's important to show people that not just the girls can wrestle, but that's an exciting thing. And we're seeing that right now on the national level. I know Julia Salada's on here. She's done some really cool stuff nationally with how she wrestles. If you haven't had a chance to go check out those videos, they're pretty powerful stuff. We try to do that statewide level with our Sanction Ohio videos. Let people know what your program's about. I know that when I think of dual meets, or I think of tournaments on the girls' side, I want people watching our girls wrestle because I know that they're solid, and I know that's going to build support for it, not just within the community, but within your administration. So make sure they know who you are, and I think that's really important too. Okay. Last thing I have here is just as we grow, okay, the girls are going to continue to see the same administrative and auxiliary support as the guys, but it's been beneficial to the culture of the program. There's been bumps within the guys and girls program as we figure out how that works. How do we share practice space? How do we, share weight room space? All the little things, all the things that are bouncing around your head right now that are concerns. Those are surmountable issues. That's okay. What you need to do is recognize that it's going to affect your program culture positively. Genevieve touched on that. And it also can reflect your school. I teach in the building, and I know that I'm going to let this guy Griffin iPad in, so if things go crazy, somebody ditch him. We know that the culture in the building, you can see a girl wrestler walking down the hall. I mean, they got the sweats tucked into the socks and the whole deal. And I think that's important for the building, for people to see all different types of kids. So if you're interested, I'll drop this or I'll have Jeff do it. Drop the link, the Google Doc down there. You can drop it in the chat. If you want to add your information to there, if you want to click across the bottoms, we've got a list of high school tournaments to add. There's, I think, 17 coming up this year. We've also got. What's that?
Is it showing up or is it still on the other screen?
Yeah, I think it's showing up in chat. Yeah.
It's visible on the shared screen.
Okay. Yeah, but they gotta put it in the chat so people can click on it, Jeff, if they want to. Like, just cut and paste the link. You know what I'm saying? So, opportunities for duels this year, opportunities for tournaments, and a lot of them are very reasonable, so don't be afraid to reach out to people. If you need help setting up a schedule, shoot me a text or an email. I'd love to help you do it. We're also doing some things where I've reached out to a bunch of women in Ohio. Some of them were our national level, national team, senior level women. Some of them wrestled a year in middle school. I've got a collaborative group of them, and there's a lot of women looking to coach. And if you're looking to get a female in your room, reach out to me, reach out to somebody else. We can get you hooked up with somebody. Thanks. Oh, it's me still. Sorry. You get a little more my giant head taking up the screen here. I'm going to be talking about this with Kevin Riemann. Kevin is the head coach at Delaware Hayes. I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself. So one thing that we all kind of do, we've got this group of coaches here in Central Ohio, and we were lucky enough last summer to be able to get together in a room a lot of time as our girls and get kids out. I always coached at schools that were wrestling schools. When I coached at Columbus West and Bishop Reedy and Untitled Orange when it opened, we had to go out in the halls and find people. And I grew up in a small high school. You're always looking for one of those 3-pounders or the old weights, right? You have to hunt kids down. I think we need to treat that as coaches the same way now when we're recruiting girls. We need to work together as a group. It's okay as in season to just be worried about your team. But right now, it's very important that we collaborate with each other to get kids interested, all right? To get kids interested, to talk about, hey, this is what's working for me to get these girls out. You need girls to have a team. And as I've talked to some programs, I've talked to some great guys, some great coaches that say, well, we only have one girl, we only have 2 girls, we don't really have any girls coming up. Hey, man, go find them. My thing is, I think it's very important that you go out there as a coach and build those relationships in the hallway. And if you're not a teacher, find another coach to be an ally. You need to go out, walk the halls, and look for a kid. We have a really tough kid in our program now, and I was standing outside my English doorway, heckling kids coming in and out of the room, and I saw this girl come out. She came out of the door next to me. She rolled her shoulders. She put her hood up, and I said, hey, you, what's your story? And she said, we talked for a minute. I said, you do any sports? She said, I do I do boxing, gymnastics, and I don't remember. There was something else. And I said, well, you should come to wrestling. And she had a great year for us. I mean, she was ranked real high all year, tough, and she's all in now. And we have a ton of girls like that. If you've gone out and recruited the hall, you've probably also found girls like that. Everybody on this call, if you've had girls in your room, you've probably looked at someone and they, not so sure when they walked into the room, but they're all in. At some point in all of our lives, wrestling got its hooks in us. And it's pretty bad when that happens because it's kind of over for you. You know that you've basically cleared your next 50 years because you're stuck. But I got girls in my program. You likely have girls in your program. You got to go out and get them, though. Same thing they can get from it that a guy can get, the value, the self-worth. Or you can just leave them alone and they can just walk the halls for 4 years and go off in their life. But if you go get them, you might make a wrestler and you might change your life the same way you would a guy's. I recruit from 4 different segments of kids. Number one, last year when we started to look, we went after the best athletes in the building. We didn't worry about if we were going to chat someone else about it. And if we got to share with another sport, we don't have a problem doing that, okay? But we went for the best athletes in the building, and we got a lot of them. We also went for any girl who had a sibling or a friend or was a daughter of an ex-wrestler, or maybe one of those stats that doesn't just sit there back in the bleachers, but's on the edge of her seat, moving around in a stance. Get those kids. So find somebody with a wrestling connection. The third group we looked for was looking for someone with just finding a place. We have 2,200 girls at Orange High School, 2,200 kids at Orange High School. So 1,000, 1,100 of them are girls. There's a lot of kids not making soccer or volleyball or anything else. Those are your gets. Okay, you can tell when someone's a wrestler. Go get them. The last one, if you have someone with a girl with a chip on her shoulder, someone with a little bit of attitude, what a great opportunity to help her redirect it. How many times have we had a guy that's got a little bit of sass in a class, a little bit of attitude, and we've had the forethought to say to him, hey, you should wrestle, right? There's, again, no reason you can't find a girl with a little bit of things that maybe aren't gone quite her way. Get her in, okay? Last thing from me, and then I'll toss it over to Kevin here. We found that getting as many, like, quote-unquote athletes or other sport athletes is a nice, easy retention category. They usually know how to work hard. They're usually a good group to build around. If you have a tough kid in your program, we're not lucky enough to have Taryn. Taryn's was a super experienced national level kid. We were able to have someone in our program that we could build it around, not just from wins and losses. I mean, she's very talented, but that they could look to her and say, okay, well, this is like what wrestling is. This is like what you do in wrestling. Okay, so she could say to them, yeah, don't do this, or yeah, do that, And so as girls around her started to learn the culture of it, they were able to pass them on now. And we got about 10 or 12 girls coming back that understand culture. And I think, when we talk to Kevin, he the same thing. So again, don't be afraid to go out and get that kid. Kevin?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Riemann. I'm the head coach at Delaware Hayes. We had about 7 girls competing this year, and we hope to double that this year and have close to a full team. Some of the things we have had success with, going back to the educating other coaches and athletes, we've actually learned that we really need to educate the coaches of the other teams to let them know that we're supporting them. Girls are going to grow in strength. They're going to grow in confidence. A lot of times I've had coaches talk to me when we're recruiting girls from their teams about they want their girls to get stronger. They don't want their girls cutting weight, and letting them know that we support their missions and it will only help their program has helped us out quite a bit. Another thing, the parents. We want to make sure we're involving the parents early and often. A lot of these girls have parents that have no idea anything about wrestling at all, so making sure we're inviting them in. We're having open mat nights that they're welcome to come to, Wrestling 101 nights, showing them some literature and things about the sport. Having allies in the building, I think Brian talked about that a little bit, but making sure we have allies in the building and in the community that know what our mission is and are able to help out in the recruiting. We do interest meetings. We found that we get the most interest during school because if the kids can get out of class, they love that, obviously. But we put together a PowerPoint that has some misconceptions about wrestling, what ringworm is, what the different uniform options are. We talk about weight cutting, cauliflower ear, all the things that kind of scare kids away from our sport. We made a presentation. We make it light, we make it funny, and that has been helpful as well. The bring a friend motto, we tell our girls to bring a friend, and we tell them it's no pressure. Try it out, see what you think. Bring someone new each time and keep our numbers growing. Selling your brand, making sure that you are promoting your girls team on social media, promoting it with gear, any way that you can keep it visible in the school really helps out. And the last thing I want to talk about, we this past year have had success because we differentiated our practice schedules to meet the needs of athletes. For example, we had a girl who was a very talented track athlete and wanted to keep doing indoor track. So we made a schedule work for her. At first, she was only coming 3 days a week. Then she got hooked and ended up being there 5 days a week anyway. But being able to work with athletes on work schedules, other sports, things like that, at least at first until they're bought in, can really help your numbers. These are some of the things that have worked for us at Delaware. I'm happy to elaborate on anything, share resources, or answer any questions at the end as well. Thanks, guys.
Hi, I'm Dave Bressler, head coach at Lutheran West High School in Rocky River. We're going into our third season of having a girls-only wrestling team. We started off, I've had girls on my team since 2006. But one of the questions I get about coaching girls wrestling is in regards to showing moves. The first year of our girls team, I had my son who was in college assisting me, and I would demonstrate the technique on him. Also, before helping a girl with a move, I would ask for permission. And we also had a parent meeting before the season to explain that wrestling is a contact sport to both the boys and the girls' parents. The NWCA also suggests having a consent form for both boys and girls, which we are going to implement this year for this season. The second year, we had a girls team. I heard Genevieve, you heard her earlier, as assistant coach for our growing team. We doubled our numbers, and we're expecting to double our numbers again, and this year have added another female assistant, Autumn Gordon, to help us push our numbers to try and double. In regards to the differences and similarities in coaching females and males, both are competitive. Both boys and girls are very competitive, but they're motivated by different goals. Females tend to seek improvement and encouragement, whereas boys tend to seek achievement, challenge, and separation. There's also a difference in confidence. Girls need to be convinced that they are better than they think they are, and it's kind of the opposite with the boys. They think they're better than they actually are. For physiological differences, girls tend to have a lower center of gravity, typically are better at headlocks, sprawling, leg riding, and are not as good at being on bottom or when someone sprawls on them. So we start with what they're naturally good at and use that to build confidence. But the expectations in our room are exactly the same as for the boys as far as practices are concerned. Lastly, provide the girls with female wrestler resources, female wrestling role models. We've already shared how she wrestled videos. That's just awesome to continue to let them know about the senior women's national team members and promote that on social media. And I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa.
Hi again. I think it's very important to understand that these young ladies are probably brand new to the whole wrestling experience. So sometimes it might be important if you can get a female leader in the room, whether it's a wrestling team mom, a past sister of a wrestler, a faculty member in the school, just someone that these girls can go to if you have that availability. Some things we like to do are team bonding activities or throwing a game in before practices. Something that I'd like to do was take the girls out for a brunch on Saturdays after our Saturday workout. I tell these girls that wrestling, this is our family. And so a hot topic that has come up is dating. A good way to look at it is wrestling is your job. You do what you want on your own time, but we don't allow unnecessary drama into the room. And that needs to be said with both the males and the females. I think that is pretty much all we have. So Jeff, if you want to go to the next slide, I think we're going to go into question and answer.
Yep.
Yeah, so while we're going to show a video and do a couple other things, while we're playing the video, could you guys go ahead, if you have questions, thoughts, things you want to bring up, misconceptions, misnomers, anything along those lines, type them in the chat, and we're going to address them right after this video.
How's that audio?
Sorry.
No sound.
Bear with me. I'm gonna. Give me 1 second.
Sometimes computers just automatically do that when you're on Zoom. I can.
Can you hear it now?
No.
No.
Let me try one more thing. I have it in my drive. Let me try to pull it up that way.
Yeah, if it looked like the video was muted, try and run it again. It looked like you were muted on the video down the bottom. Try that.
Anything there?
Jeff, you got to share your sound. It's actually on Zoom. I think maybe in the bottom right somewhere. There's something that says share sound.
I apologize. I'm trying to figure this out.
And these are all available on the Twitter page. We've sent them out. I think we have 7 episodes, right, Jeff?
Yes.
So, they're all available to watch and I see there's some questions about letters. We can definitely tell you guys how that works in most buildings as we get to that point too.
You guys go ahead and talk. I'm going to try to figure this out.
right.
Real quick.
Oh, one of the things I forgot to add in is one of the resources, if you're looking, luchafit.com. There are the Wrestle Like a Girl videos that have been posted. We've mentioned the hashtag How She Wrestles. You can search that on Twitter, Instagram, I think Facebook, all the social media outlets. Really great stories to hear. USA Wrestling also has some resources as well.
All right. Let's see if this works. I changed it to the same as system, so you may hear it now. Nothing?
It's super low.
I have it turned up all the way on my
Volume.
system.
All right, we're good.
Hey, Jeff, if you unshare and then go back in and share, there's a button on the bottom left-hand corner that allows you to share your audio. And that's why you're not getting it to work.
So I said select the speaker and select the microphone, same as system. Let's try that one time. If not, we'll go to the questions and we'll move on. I gotta share my screen first though. All right, last try. Let me know if you guys hear anything.
My name's Grace Jones. I'm 16 years old. I go to London High School. I am currently going into my senior year, and I'm a wrestler.
My name is Kayla Newskin. I just graduated from Beaver Creek High School, and I've wrestled for 12 years.
My name is Ayala. I'm 16 years old, and I've been wrestling for 2.5 years.
I got into it because my brother started wrestling, and I always did everything he did, and I just fell in love with it. But then middle school hit, life changed, and I took a break for a while, and then I started back up my sophomore year, and this has been my second year since, and it's been the time of my life.
I believe that Ohio should sanction women's wrestling because why not? Like, there's already a lot of women in the sport right now, a lot of girls starting from younger and younger ages, and sanctioning the sport will only help that number grow. As you can see in other states who have sanctioned women's wrestling, the numbers skyrocket after it's sanctioned.
I was at no point in my life where I wanted to wrestle. I was dancing ballet 6 days a week, and the thought of wrestling on a sweaty mat against boys just was not appealing to me. But a year later, I decided to wrestle, and I went from dancing 6 days a week to dancing and wrestling. And if you're interested in wrestling, give it a shot. You never know what opportunities it'll bring you or where it will take you.
To all the girls that may want to wrestle, give it a chance. Yes, it's hard at first. Actually, it's always hard. But that's the best thing about wrestling. No matter what, it's challenging. Whether you meet a new person that you go up against that's way better than you, or a new move that's really hard to get. It's always a challenge, and that's the best thing about wrestling. It will always challenge you.
All right, glad we got that to work finally. I apologize for my technical difficulties. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my, well, can I? Maybe
You want to do that and I'll just start talking?
I think I can maybe share the questions, or you,
Yeah, well.
we can go, I can pull up the chat.
Okay. So my name is Jared Ball. I'm a former wrestling coach and currently a school administrator. And, you know, I think, you know, I didn't see a ton of questions in there. Those that were listed in the chat, you know, we can kind of touch on here real quick. But this is a great opportunity for you. You know, very, very seldom, especially with the way things are right now, are you going to get the opportunity to talk to women who've competed, you know, on a high level, as well as talking to people who've coached them, both male and female coaches. I think some of these people have a lot of experience that definitely could lend itself well to, you know, to kind of lead you in the direction, because everybody is across the board with this. So, you know, I know one question I saw there, you know, I saw related to lettering. It sounded like, you know, Brittany, you had asked a question about lettering. Did that answer your question specific? It sounds like it's specific to, you know, the school district you're in, as far as that applies. Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally does. I'm just going from a situation where everything was super easy with like girls on the boys roster to now trying to start a whole new program with a club type of team, and hoping we can do that. If not, we'll roster with the boys. But just kind of looking for that in with like the little to no startup cost, you know, with the club thing. But I have girls that are going to be ranked and stuff. So if it's a difference of like them not being able to compete at the tournament, then they'll have to be rostered. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Brittany, based on requirements of last year's state tournament for the girls, they did have to be rostered. They did have to have their alpha weight and hydration test. So from that standpoint, they would have to be. If the school considers them a club, doesn't matter. They just have to have those requirements from OHSA.
Okay, so like Bell Fountain, like Michaela and Chelsea, they were a club.
Yeah, but they were rostered. So I talked to a couple people, and this is Nicola. Here's what I'm understanding, and I don't want to put the schools out there because they talked to me kind of specifically about it. There's a few schools that okay, but you know, they practice separately, or they practice as a club. So everyone's like, that's non-negotiable. And they've also, not just being alpha, they've also got to make sure they pass eligibility tests. There was at least one athlete last year at the state tournament, which was the day before, they called the director and said, so these girls need to be eligible? And he said, yes, this is like a school. And they went, oh yeah, we'll take her out then. So it's like, if you take all your girls at CJ and you alpha them and put them on the roster, you know, you could practice separately, you could fundraise as a club, but, you know, to build on that, to build on what your lettering situation is too, you know, a lot of that changed for schools as the season went on. There were schools that were straight up, you know, saying you're a club, represented as a club, but now those girls are up on the wall or banners are hanging, which we all think they should be. I mean, I think that making sure all those girls are weighed in and on the OSA roster, and that clarification went out to athletic directors last year that any girl wrestling is meant to be an OSA athlete. So
Okay, sounds good.
yeah.
I think I get it now. I think I understand it a little bit better.
Brittany, the only other thing I'm going to add there is the other thing, it comes down to individual events. I know that we were at least one tournament where there were some girls who were not alpha'd and they were on club teams and the tournament director let them in, and then there were other events where they were not. So there's that aspect.
Right.
And then the last part is obviously we're all trying to provide numbers and data to show growth. And that just reinforces that need to have that alpha test, because a lot of the numbers that are and data that is pulled directly from track wrestling. So if they're not alpha'd, then they're not going to count. They're not going to count towards our 2021 numbers.
Yep, I got that. I'm on board with that for sure. And I wasn't even coming from like the wrestling club frame of mind, more like school club. And I know the tournaments and stuff that you're talking about. So I totally understand what to avoid and all that jazz.
Rich had a question about recruiting, but before we get to that, it sounds like Jack had kind of an addendum to the question about girls being rostered. He asked, with girls who are still wrestling co-ed, will their alpha weigh in at a co-ed event count for girls events? So more of a rules and terp question there.
I'll go ahead and answer that. OHSA is adding in the girls' weights this year. So say they wrestle 106 at a boys event and they weigh in below 101, they would alpha for their 101 weight. So because now they're looking at the same way as it did last year, except for OHSA is reckoning our girls' weights this year. Brian, comment? Or you agree?
Yeah, so the one thing I don't know about, and we can ask OSA once they figure out what fall looks like, and I'm sure that's the highest priority right now. What I don't know is, like, does if a girl weighs in at, if she weighs in,
I can chime in here, Brian.
Yeah, go ahead, sir. I got you. Because I'm worried about, like, what if she's alphaing at 132 on the boys' weight, but 131's the girls' weight? How does
Ultimately, every time you print out a weigh-in sheet, it tells you your lowest eligible weight for that date. So if you are below that, it doesn't count. So if it says your descent plan can be 102 and you weigh in at 101, it doesn't count. If your descent plan says you can be 100.8 and you wrestle in a boys event that's a 106-pound weight class, but the weight that's written down on the weigh-in sheet is below 101, then you have met your alpha weight. I think my experience in the last 2 years is there's less and less girls wrestling co-ed events. But for those that do, ultimately, it's your responsibility to keep your weigh-in sheet that shows, and when you print it off, it'll show what their lowest eligible weight is for that day, and it will have their actual weight for that day. And then the only time it becomes an issue is if someone challenges that you have not made your alpha. And so it's the coach's responsibility to keep those weigh-in sheets in the event that someone were to challenge you at the state tournament or another event to say, well, Brian Nicola never made 126. So really, I mean, that's all it comes down to is, does the number that you weighed in that day match up with what your lowest eligible weight is for that day?
Okay, so moving on to the question about recruiting. And if you guys, if this is the last question, then we'll kind of finish up after this, unless there's another question that pops up in the chat. But Rich asks about recruiting. He says he's already doing videos and hosting tournaments and publishing accomplishments. Dave had mentioned talking to other teams and coaches. Kevin had mentioned talking to staff members in the school. A lot of coaches that are going to be working in these programs may not work within the schools. So do any of you have recommendations about ways to get inroads to get out there and, beat the bushes to try and get people out that other than things that have already been mentioned.
Hey, what Kevin said.
Oh,
go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah, go ahead, Brittany.
I'd just like to chime in real quick. I'm on the committee too, but I've been really busy the last few weeks with moving and whatnot. So I wasn't prepared on the call, but one thing that I think we miss a lot because we get real wrapped up into wrestling, but a really easy way to recruit is through like local martial arts gyms, jiu-jitsu gyms, parents and siblings of martial arts students or anyone you know that's like into MMA also trains wrestling. And if you don't know a lot about a 14 to 18-year-old girl, one thing they lack is confidence. So anywhere you can find a female leader that is a strong figure that can help out with your wrestling program from any of those backgrounds, they can help you. From MMA to karate to jiu-jitsu, any of those types of females in your lives or in your community, they can help your program out tremendously.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
I just want to build off with what Kevin said, where he said we get names from staff members, and rather than me like randomly just going up to some random kid, I do that sometimes, but like it gets a little weird sometime when you're just like walking around talking to kids constantly. So if we'd have a list of like 10 or 12 girls and we go to our Sunday workout, like our Sunday open mat, and I'd say, okay, who knows Sally Miller? And somebody'd say, oh, she's in my math class. Well, get her here next Sunday. Get her to lifting on Tuesday. So being approached by a peer also goes a long way. Getting that list. We also did some handwritten notes where like we would say, hey, we'd love to see you on the mat with us. We heard you're good at this sport. And having the girls kind of reach out to getting that list from the school. And then kind of calling that and breaking it down and having girls that know different kids go after them specifically and get them here. Same thing you do with the guys too. Say, hey, make sure you get these freshmen here for this open mat. And so seniors picking them up and stuff like that.
I've typed in about talking to the soccer and the volleyball programs, approached the coach, let me have about 10 minutes to talk to them. As a team, we brought them all in. Kind of introduced me, and been able to just to tell them a couple examples, like Jessie Lee out of Elyria, who was a volleyball stud and now is wrestling for Tiffin. That really resonated with the volleyball girls. And we were able to pick up 2 volleyball girls and 3 soccer players just from that talk that they probably would have never known about had I not gone in. This year I plan on taking my wrestlers with me and letting them talk to those teams.
Any other coaches with some recruiting gold that they would like to share?
I won't call it gold, but I will say, I tell all of our kids the doors don't close, right? I don't close doors. And so, we had 6 girls to start the season, and we went to a girls only tournament or went to some girls only matches. And the following day I had 5 girls come up to me and say, wait a second, I can wrestle other girls. So it doesn't matter like how much you tell them until they see it, right? So again, that goes back to promoting what you do, but also, be willing to let kids join in January, right? Like part of me, like the old school wrestling coach of me is like, oh, if they haven't been doing it the whole time, they missed their opportunity. I really shifted gears in that way in the last few years, not just on the girls' side, on both sides of it, but you can never stop recruiting, right? So sometimes them going and seeing it, like we had a wrestling manager who was a manager, and then she went to a girls event, and like 2 weeks later she was coming out to practice and trying it, and she didn't stick with it, but we gave her that opportunity. It didn't matter that it was January 7th and that the season had already been going for 6 weeks, because we were just trying to build numbers, and we ended up getting 5 girls that stuck it out, and every girl on our team won a match this year, so it wasn't like they were out there being outclassed. I mean, they found ways to compete, and I think these first few years is going to be really important that we promote the fact that they can have success just because even though they haven't been wrestling since they were 5 years old. This is the window where they can figure out and have some success.
Thank you.
Ray LaManna, you're on.
Say again.
I say Ray LaManna from Mentor. I think he's on. and he might be able to offer something. I think they got a whole bunch of girls from rugby. He's muted. He might not hear me. But
okay.
Yeah, I think Menor, they went after a lot of their rugby. They have a club rugby program.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Hey, Ray.
Okay, sorry about that. I was trying to unmute. Yeah, we have a rugby team at our high school, and they had actually come to us one time and asked us if they could use our mats and show our girls how to do a double leg, because there's a similarity between taking someone down in rugby and wrestling, and we said, yeah, that'd be great, but all we want out of it is to be able to talk to the girls about wrestling after it's over, and so they came in and we worked with them, and from that we had some girls who were interested, and we talked to them for a few minutes, and when the season came around, we had several of those girls show up, and unfortunately with the end of last season, rugby was just starting up and coming around, so again, the rugby girls were coming into our room after wrestling practice was ending, and we were starting to talk to girls, and it kind of broke down just because of the whole COVID thing, but that was a great source for us, and they're our number one draw, because those girls are clearly the girls who just any kind of physical contact, they're not afraid of it. So they're a great group to kind of approach. But someone mentioned about going out to other teams. I don't know if this would help, but there's a lot of coaches that have been involved with wrestling. They just don't coach wrestling. And so like we have a soccer coach this year. He was a head coach for wrestling for us. So he's our next big source. So he's kind of helping us out already by talking to all the girls from soccer. So it's kind of just informing those other coaches and getting them to be on board. But I know we have some other coaches in the district who were former wrestlers. I just didn't know that until recently, but they're involved with girls programs. So that is something we're looking into too, because they're trying to relay that information to their girl athlete now to help us along. So
thank you. Thanks, Greg. Circle back real quick, weight class question regarding the girls' weight classes. Are they going to be the same ones used at the Coaches Association Girls State last year? And then also with tournaments, I don't know if I'm reading this correctly, but it says number of girls wrestlers. Sounds like there was some combined weights? Is that what they're referring to?
Yeah. Last year we didn't have to. I don't think any of the tournaments we had to combine. A lot of times they call those Madison weights, where they group a few weight classes together to get the numbers and that type of thing. But at the tournaments we had last year for the girls alone, we didn't have to do that. We had some where we shifted to create better matchups or things like that with experience levels. But for the most part, no, they were independent weight classes, and they will remain the same this year.
Hey, one thing that we did, so the tournaments remained without combining weights, but one thing that we did at a lot of events was like we would invite a couple different teams to dual meets. We had a couple straight up duels at Orange, but a lot of times, like if our boys were wrestling Liberty, we invited 3 other teams to come down, and we did do some matching up there, like Jeff said, where like we might move a kid up a weight just to get a matchup. That was a great way. I think Mentor Ray did that up there. When you guys had some people, I think that was maybe mid-December. And a lot of schools have done that. Bring girls in, weigh them in, match them up. But for straight up tournaments, I mean, everyone we went to had the straight weights. There was no combining, which I think does add some validity to it. You make your weight, or you don't wrestle. And I think that's important, as they learn that piece of the sport.
So I don't see any more questions posted. Just I guess one thing that I'll share, because I don't know that I've contributed nearly as much as a lot of these other people on these committees, but just as somebody who is a school administrator, I would highly recommend that you think of this as an opportunity to educate up to your athletic directors, educate up to your school administrators and so forth, because a lot of them, I mean, obviously right now it's chaotic. Nobody knows what school looks like. Nobody knows what anything looks like. But, when I've talked to a couple ADs, they say, yeah, boys volleyball, they've been in emerging sports status for so on and so forth. A lot of them wait on the OHSAA for things. And so for the one thing that I've learned through this process and sitting through these is educate up to those people about, you don't have to wait. You can get out and push. you know, you can do things that don't require waiting on, you know, a governing body to make a decision. And I would say that that was probably my biggest takeaway from listening, you know, to meeting with all these people. So that would be one thing I would share. And I'll turn it back over to Tella there, because I know we're going to post this video somewhere, correct? And then there's going to be contact info.
Yeah, I just had one more part to add to recruiting. I think I just want to second everybody when they say recruiting girls is a social thing. You know, you're getting your other girls out there, recruiting other girls. You're showing girls on the mat, and once you see it, just like everybody else said, then you know you can do it. But the one part I didn't hear is that a lot of times girls who get involved with wrestling have never done any other sport. And so you can engage girls into your athletic program that have done 0 other sports, because sometimes wrestling just is that fit. And girls that have had tough backgrounds, once you have had a difficult life, you know, you've maybe grown up in a difficult life situation, you've already gotten past the, you know, dealing with toughness, and wrestling, that struggle becomes your superpower in wrestling. So it really engages girls that otherwise maybe wouldn't have that engagement, that intense engagement that can make a 100% difference in how their life turns out. And then you couple that with all the opportunity post high school. Wrestling adds so many opportunities, and it can change many girls' lives. So I just want to throw that in there. Being a non-athlete until middle school, and being terrible at all the other sports, and then trying wrestling and being terrible at wrestling, but sticking with it because I loved it, and then, you know, it got me places. So I just want to add that. And actually, I'm not closing things up. I'm going to pass that back to Jeff, perhaps. Vanessa?
That's fine. You know, one thing I want to say is, you know, we have quite a few people on here, and a lot of people have been instrumental in starting programs at their own schools, their middle schools, and things like that. I just want to open the floor. If there's anybody out there that wants did we forget something? Did we need to add something? What other information can you guys use? Mindy, Eddie, anybody else on here that has something to say, feel free to speak up right now. I mean, I think it's great that, you know, we get the input from all over the state and from individuals that have been instrumental in their own districts.
Hey Jeff, where can we find the information?
It's gonna be in the when we share the video. I just popped this back up again. I think it's gonna come.
There you go.
So we have sanctionohio.com, and that's where we're gonna have a lot of our information about our one pager and our mission statement and everything that goes along with Sanction Ohio. With Wrestle Like a Girl. All right. We also have a campaign going to try to raise a little bit of funding, you know, website design, and, you know, using everybody and getting the support we need does take a little financial support. So Rudis has partnered with us and allows us to get some proceeds from that. And then across all social media, we have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you do Ohio Girls Wrestling, it's pretty much going to show up on any of them. Besides Instagram, it's just Sanction Ohio. That was the last one that was added. All of the media stuff, social media stuff, communications about future calls for parents, for wrestlers, for administrators will be posted there. The support videos that the high school girls, youth, and middle school girls are putting together right now to tell us what this movement means to them will be shared there. Along with any other informational thing about tournaments, teams, press releases, newspaper articles, and, you know, like just TV shows, things along those lines. We've had a ton of coverage lately. This Week News, which is our local thing in Central Ohio, they just put out an article today, and the Dispatch put one out last week about sanctioning girls wrestling. So the media is picking up on it. They're standing behind us. But the more information we can give them, the feel-good stories, the more positive it's going to be. And that's all I got.
I just want to add real quick that it was kind of stated by Tyler Brooks in one of those articles that financially, they're not looking to add any sports this coming season. So we kind of know that it's not going to be sanctioned this upcoming season, but we're going to keep working hard and promoting girls wrestling and trying to build wrestling as a whole as well, providing opportunities for these young girls. So we're not going to stop doing that, regardless of how they want to go about sanctioning. We've also been hoping that they'll come up with sanctioning criteria. They have yet to do that. It's kind of where wrestling is already happening with girls. They're already able to compete. So we're trying to get kind of if there's a magic number or how we can go about getting that criteria. But just want to let you all know that.
I would ask. I would ask one thing for anybody who's been on this that's getting involved in a program. Share this with 2 to 3 other coaches that you know that weren't in here. So share it, spread the word, share the webinar link, share the website information. That helps spread the word.
We should probably have that out probably in the next 24 to 48 hours too. So I'll post it across all social media and try to get to everybody we can. I think Brian has a ton of emails for all the coaches across that have given us their information about possibly starting teams, and we'll get it out there to everybody.
Yeah, I dropped a link in there, guys. It's about a 3 or 4 question thing. If you're interested, fill that out. I'll have you in a listserv, and it'll be real easy to push it out to you. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you guys.